It was called the Weblog Handbook. Rebecca had a story in it that said that if you followed the blog of a plumber and you were doing restoration work in an old house, who would you call if you came downstairs and there was an inch of water in your kitchen one morning? You would call that plumber.
Today on LawNext, building trust and communities through blogging. My guest is Kevin O'Keefe, the founder of LexBlog, a company that helps lawyers create and launch blogs and that, more recently, launched a global legal news and commentary network based on law blogs. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that highlights the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. And let me say up front that Kevin and I are colleagues. I joined LexBlog last January as its publisher and editor-in-chief to help launch the news network I just described. Before we get to the interview with Kevin O'Keefe, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now here's my interview with Kevin. I wanted to back up a little bit and talk about a little bit about the history of LexBlog and what brought you to found this company in the first place. What was it you set out to do with LexBlog?
There were a couple things that I was thinking about. I was at the end of a covenant not to compete with LexisNexis on a sale of a previous company to them. I wanted to learn how to write better.
Prairie law.
And I wanted to learn how to write better. And that was one of the goals during the year covenant not to compete. So I was kind of failing as it was coming close to the end. I was reading, you read books on how to write better. That doesn't do a whole lot of good if you're not writing. So that was one thing in the back of my mind. And the second thing, though, was that I wanted to help lawyers understand how to use the internet in order to grow their business so that they didn't have to worry about where their work was coming from. And in 2003, I saw that they really had no clue. They were building websites. They were trying to get people to come to their websites. They were buying ads on the internet. They were getting directory listings. They were doing all this stuff. It was just the yellow pages and the TV reincarnated.
I hate to sound like an old fogey, but there are a lot of people today, especially younger lawyers, who really wouldn't understand how foreign a thing the internet was to a lot of lawyers 15 years ago.
It's still foreign today
well,
to most of them. I mean, most of them, if I ask a lawyer, how do you use the internet to get work? Oh, you get a website, you get some SEO, you get listed in directories, you get a bunch of links, you buy AdWords. I hear you can buy some ads on Facebook or LinkedIn or all this type of stuff. It's no different than if you were buying radio advertising, newspaper advertising, buying a listing in Martindale Hubbell. When the internet came along, it was a great equalizer. Without incurring any expense, I could go out and be myself and go out where people were and begin to build a reputation with them. So here I was literally sitting in my garage trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Yeah, you were blogging already then.
No, I was not.
You were not blogging?
No.
I thought you were.
So I'm sitting there in the garage trying to figure out what I'm going to do to help lawyers understand how to use the internet. I was going to use a website. I was going to use a message board. Was I going to use a listserv, a newsletter, whatever, all things I had done before. And I don't know what time of the evening it was, but I stumbled into a Business 2.0 article that had a little red box that said there was a service that it was going to have 10,000 subscribers in 90 days. That was a lot because that was like AOL uptake. People would pay money for something, take money out of their pocket and put it in somebody else's pocket on a monthly subscription. It turned out that was a web-based blog service called TypePad. And I'm going, what is TypePad? What is a blog? And I think it was all on that same night. And I opened up a computer and realized that you can put your credit card information in and you can publish to the internet. That was unheard of then. I mean, the idea that you could publish yourself to the internet without putting it on some website or getting a website development person or whatever it was. I did that. And I put up an article about, hey, if you're going to have a website, this is all the website needs to be. And I put up some stuff about how you go out where people are on the internet and cause them to trust you, this type of thing. Various ways you can do it. Very quickly, people contacted me. A lawyer in Orlando and a larger firm in Pittsburgh. And I was just dumbfounded because I'm literally in my garage, totally dumbfounded. And then somebody invited me to San Francisco to speak from the Legal Marketing Association chapter. I'd never heard of the Legal Marketing Association. I had no idea what it was. And Tim Stanley, that had founded FindLaw with his wife, Stacy Stern, had given my name to...
And now Justia.
Given my name to the CMO of Fenwick. And he introduced me in front of this group as the national leader on blogs for lawyers. And I was laughing, thinking, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. But I wasn't so crazy to think that maybe people would ask me about it. But I didn't know what it was going to be. So I had these little cards made up for Seattle Blog Works. Funny name, and there's a little gear on the card. Tim and I drove up from Mountain View. I'm sleeping on a futon in an office for a new company they were going to start. And because I had wanted to save my nest egg from the previous company. And people came up and asked me, can you help us do this? And I'm thinking, help you do what? Buy a $4.95 subscription and write some content on the internet? But what happened was the company started pretty much that day. And we went back to Tim Stanley's office for the new company. He hadn't started it yet. And I said, can I start a company to do blogs? And he said, blogs are free. And I said, yeah, but there's a bunch of stuff that people don't know how to do, including me, and I couldn't find anybody to help me. I didn't know how to make. Could you make design on it? What's SEO? I have no idea what that is. A bunch, 6 or 7 things. So, how do you do it? What's the strategy for it? Where does it get hosted? What's the design? Who's going to provide free ongoing support? Who provides SEO? So there's 7 things. Would people pay for it? That was it. I made a list of 7 things. And it was that day that I got the domain name LexBlog.com. Yeah. And that would have been in March or April of 2004.
Yeah. What did you see as the potential of blogs for the legal profession in particular, as opposed to the blogs for the rest of the world?
To me, it was crystal clear even before I went down there. There were 2 books on blogging that I found that may have been the only ones that existed back in 2003, 2004. And it was probably before I went down to California. And I picked them both up. One was by Rebecca Blood. It was called the Weblog Handbook. She had been asked by a group or a publisher, can you write a book on blogging? It was very good. The other was written by Biz Stone, which was one of the founders of Twitter. It was a little bit more sensationalized. But Rebecca had a story in it that said that if you followed the blog of a plumber and you were doing restoration work in an old house and you came to read the plumber's blog, who would you call if you came downstairs and there was an inch of water in your kitchen one morning? You would call that plumber. When I read that, I was in a bookstore about 8 blocks from here. My heart started racing because I called us plumbers in law school. I mean, everybody's all excited about us being lawyers. And I said, wait a second, just so you understand this, we're no different than plumbers. We sell our time. It may be about $50 more an hour than a plumber, but we are plumbers. We sell our time. So when she used the word plumber, I could immediately just relate very quickly to the fact it's like lawyers. You can establish trust with people. That's why people hire lawyers. If you get my name from somebody you know, first thing you're going to do is look me up. You're not going to be totally impressed by my blog alone. You might say, this is helpful information. What if you see people citing me? So what if somebody from Miami, what if somebody from New York, somebody from Boston, somebody from LA cited what I wrote in my blog? That would turn your head. So you build trust with blogging. So to me, it's obvious that they work. What's sad is that there's so few lawyers that blog, and even those lawyers that blog really blog versus just put up content to try to get people to look at them.
That or now?
Now.
No. It's still that way, you think?
I mean, you don't pick an estate planning lawyer because they're really good at SEO. I don't think.
Right. What you just said has got me thinking, only because I'm, clearly there are a whole lot more lawyers blogging today than whenever, obviously, and there are an awful lot of really good blogs out there. There are an awful lot of really bad blogs still.
Many more. good blogs than there were 2004, 2005.
Right. And that in fact is a key part of the premise of what we're working on now and what we're building here now, which is to build out this network at LexBlog.com of legal blog content around, that's reporting news, that's analyzing what's going on in the legal profession. But as part of that, what we launched this as we're speaking. We just launched this last week is when we formally launched it. We've been working on it since January. Where are we? It's September, middle of September right now. But as part of that, what we're doing is inviting legal bloggers really all over the world to apply to be members, I guess we're calling them, to include their blogs within what we're building. And so we're actually screening these blogs as bloggers submit their blogs for inclusion in the network. And there are not a lot maybe, but too many blogs that are still just exist for the purpose of SEO, and they're just full of spam content. I don't know how many blogs there still are being written that are every other sentence is motor vehicle accident injury attorney. And I don't know how you write a blog post where every other sentence has to be motor vehicle accident injury attorney.
Well, maybe if you're in junior high and you're writing those, you do a very nice job of it. Because some of them do look like that. If you can
saw one yesterday. Just like this.
You can find some blogs that look like they're not written by people with college degrees, let alone a lawyer.
Yeah. Of course, lawyers aren't writing these things. They're not hiring some marketing agency. You don't have
to get me started. But if I look at the ethics rules, and people have different opinions, but it says, I believe in every state, that you can't say anything that's misleading.
Of course.
When you're doing something to try to get work, which is advertising.
Right.
Okay. I believe that the average person believes when they open up the newspaper, if it says Bob Ambrogi was the reporter, that he wrote it. They also believe when they see a fashion blog and the author's name is there that they wrote it, they think he or she wrote it. So where did lawyers get off? And they're basically saying that doesn't count for lawyers. Oh, that's right, because we're liars and cheats. So what you're doing is you're saying because we are so devious and so untruthful, this doesn't really count. Everybody should know that a lawyer isn't writing that. I've had some people say, well, of course the public knows that the lawyers aren't writing it because the lawyers are too busy. It'd be like a surgeon not writing this article for a Harvard Medical Review or the Lancet, because obviously a surgeon is too busy to write, so they had a medical student write it. You can't do that. You can have people contribute, but if you're going to be part of this thing, you should put your name on it. But you don't have to get me started on that. The people that would say it's not unethical, it'd be really fun to say, well, why don't we just put it up for an opinion in front of your state bar? Why don't you and this other company get up in front of the state bar and just condone it? Because when I talk to people that lead the ethics groups, they're dumbfounded. They go, well, how could a lawyer not write their own blog? That's what goes on everywhere.
Yeah.
So when I've talked to various states, they don't. But by and large, this morning, I think we had one this morning, didn't it come in with infographics of Supreme Court decisions?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. They're really putting some work into it. Some of the stuff we've been getting in is just amazingly good. As you know, I since I've been working with you guys, I do a little newsletter every week where I just kind of take a topic and I go out and see what bloggers are, how that topic is being covered by the blogosphere, which is a phrase we don't want to use anymore, but about how legal bloggers are covering that topic. And it's constantly amazes me at the depth and breadth of good stuff being written about just about anything.
Amazing stuff. When you think about it, we're not out here with a sales team trying to recruit new bloggers. We're out just spreading the word that there's good news and commentary on law blogs. And what we're doing is we're bringing it all together in a worldwide community of legal bloggers, and shine a light on them in a positive way so people can discover them. The other thing, I think that we both agree on, to give them, an attagirl or an attaboy, you're doing a good job. We want to showcase your content. We want to have a profile of who you are on this site. And here's all your blog posts. so that people are motivated to continue to do great stuff.
Yeah.
I think that it will, you've been a big believer in the power of LawBlog since the beginning. I think this can make it even more powerful, because I think we're going to get more people to blog. We're certainly going to bring more bloggers into the community.
Yeah. How did LexBlog get from that vision you had 15 years ago to talking about creating a global legal news network around blog content?
Where it is today is we realized as a company, why do we have a marketing site up that talks about what LexBlog does? Here's the prices, here's the features, here's the people, all this type of stuff.
Which is what LexBlog.com was. You went to the site.
LexBlog.com
It was a standard company marketing.
About a year ago.
Yeah.
And didn't make any sense. We should be known by the power of our audience. These are great people with great insight and commentary. And the New York Times wouldn't have, here's the advertising rates and here's some news behind it, or here's some news on another site.
Yeah.
So it went that. And then you go through, the other thing that goes on is it might feel like a gamble, but it's a gamble not to do something. How many companies do we know that are on year 15? They're going to say, do you know what we're going to do for the next 5? We're going to do the same damn thing we did for the last 15. And if we nail it, and we're the exact same company doing this exact same thing at year 20 as we were doing year 1, we'll be a huge success. There aren't any of those companies.
Right.
So you have to take the chance that, okay, we're going to change things up. It's going to be confusing in people's eyes. It's going to cause a lot of stress around here as we start to do a few different things for people here, because we're going to have to figure out what this is. How do we pull it together? What are the components from a technology standpoint? What are the components for how it's viewed to the outside world? And then you got to control the vision enough for the outside world to start to feel it, because you don't just to go announce and say, we used to be this, now start to know us as that. So there was a lot of conversation. My COO, Gary Vandervoort, was very good with it to say, we're not going to be successful unless we change. And then at the same time, Matt Mullenweg at WordPress said the same thing, because people were fighting him on him changing the interface for publishing from what you have today to what you'll see by the end of the year and early next year. People said, why do we need to do this? And he goes, how many companies do you know that don't change? They have to change, and it's too scary to change. It's too scary not to change. So part of it was driven by, we need to change for the sake of changing, as opposed to just the evolution. But right now it feels good. It feels good to be, a worldwide community of legal bloggers, and to start to watch the quality of the bloggers come in and to realize the potential that we have. I think having you on board has helped a lot, because you bring the stature of somebody coming from legal journalism and legal reporting. You're a veteran legal journalist.
Yeah, well, it's, you and I have talked about this before, but we have, over the years, I've known you for a long time now, well before I came to work for the company, and at any number of times over beers here and there, we talk about kind of the state of the legal media, and we talk about to some extent, the dissolution, the diminution of kind of traditional media. It's something I've felt very strongly about, that the sources, the resources being put to covering legal news have been drying up in a lot of ways, and over that time, we've both watched as legal blogs have increased in number, increased in quality, increased in breadth of coverage. And it just, it seemed to me that I at some point our own conversations kind of both came around to the same point of, why aren't we doing more to highlight this wealth of stuff that's out there that's covering all this stuff? And so much of it was already on your platform. I mean, so many of these people are already your customers, people, law firms blogging on your platform. But now that we've opened it up to any blog can be part of what we're doing. There's no cost; anybody can be part of it, and it's really opened up a whole new way of following legal news. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I do remember. I vividly remember a meeting or a conference I was at back in Chicago. You were there, and you're going, we should just do this. I think there was some uncertainty at that point in time as to whether with just the internal resources of LexBlog, we could build something like that. We're blessed with a really strong tech team, development team, design team here. They do a really nice job, and they're very committed to the cause. And by Josh Lintz, our CTO, figuring out how to retool all the blogs from being on individual installs into one giant piece of software, that freed the team up to work on features and upgrades to just that, to do larger projects like we've just launched to start with. But you're right. I mean, things are. I mean, we just saw that the CEO and founder of Salesforce bought Time Magazine. I mean, that seems pretty unbelievable compared to when I can remember my dad coming home with a briefcase, sometimes Time, sometimes Newsweek. It's whatever the company gave him. But those two publications led United States print news for the week. It went away. We look at major publishers in the law, American Lawyer Media, great company, great people, but there's been some heavy turnover over the years, and it's probably because it's hard to afford the level of talent they had with declining revenues. They may have a better structure right now of having reporters cover things, but there's no way that they can compete with the insight and commentary and reporting that's done on our network on a given day. Ain't no way. Because let's say they have 10, 12, 15, 20 stories in their various publications. What if we have 100? What if we have 200? And we're only including the blogs. Mostly on this network are ones written on our platform. They're coming in now steady.
They're coming in now. But we have, what are we up to? Close to, I think it's 20,000 active bloggers on this network right now.
Some publish more often than others, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
And then
it's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, we're interviewing right now to continue to build out the publishing team, so that you can begin to see what's there. So if they're going to go cover, Jared Soldorf, our head of products, has led the development of LexBlog, was the other night, and he does a search on Kavanaugh, and we haven't developed, fine-tuning the search. And you start to look at all the people that talked about Judge Kavanaugh for the last how many years?
Yeah.
Decade or more.
Right. So it becomes a research platform as well as a current awareness platform.
The ability to subscribe to content.
Yeah.
So you could go in and do a particular search on a...
Subscribe, not in the pay sense.
Yeah. But imagine you do a particular search on a federal regulation. And that way it just drops into your news aggregator with a rights on it.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
You can take all this content and it goes to secondary source. It sits next to primary law. So we're beginning the experimentation with Fastcase, because when I practice law, if I could find an annotation to good information the night before I had to be in court the next morning on a motion hearing, it was gold.
Yeah.
I had to get it off the shelf because we had American Law Review 1 and 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
Read the article, make a photocopy of it, bring it into the judge, highlight it. Imagine now being in Fastcase, you're doing the research, and it says, Bob, you should take a look at these 2 blog posts. They're right on point. And you've seen the technology now. It may not even do that. It might say, hey, we looked at your memorandum. Here's the cases you should look at, and here's the 3 blog posts you should look at. And by the way, if you want to contact the blogger, here's their email and cell phone.
Yeah, yeah.
That we're moving past traditional publishing very, very fast.
Yeah, the coolest part of what we built so far in a lot of ways is really the technology that's driving all this. And it's hard for an outsider to understand it. But what we have built, not we, I didn't do it. But as you say, you have a great tech team here, and they've built a platform that lets us aggregate content both from within the LexBlog network, the current customer base, but also from blogs in general, picking up their RSS feeds and pull it all together in a way that's totally seamless, that allows us to organize this information in all sorts of different ways, not just by topic, but by blogger, by the firm they're affiliated with, by, what else? By individual bloggers. That platform has possibilities and potential beyond just what we're doing with it. Do you want to talk about that a little bit in terms of what that platform is?
I do believe that we are making the law more accessible to people. Now, I don't mean giving them legal services at a lower cost necessarily, but law connotates that you might need a lawyer. Maybe you don't for certain types of legal services, but certain types you do. But you need to be able to pick a lawyer in an informed fashion to really get a lawyer. I've had to hire lawyers at various times for LexBlog. We're a small company. I don't care what anybody says. It is not easy. And I'm a lawyer. Why shouldn't we be able to see who writes on that issue and who provides the insight and commentary on that issue? If I, God forbid, had a sick relative in another city and I wanted to find a doctor that treated this particular condition, am I going to go to the hospital or the clinics and do searches on this condition? And it's going to have one line that they treat it. And somewhere down in the profile prepared by a marketing person, and it's going to say that they like to go hunting and fishing on the weekends with their kids. Like that's going to help me decide. But what if over time I find out that doctor actually writes and that doctor gets cited and I can understand it? So if I'm in Michigan and I'm running a small business, who'd be a good business lawyer for me? Who deals with employment issues? Who deals with non-competes? What happens if I am the victim of domestic abuse and my husband has kicked me out of the house with 2 kids and I've got an iPhone and I just Google domestic abuse, lawyer, law, and Google will take care of knowing where I'm located and where the blogger is. And that blogger will be near the top of the search engine. And what does the person do? They're reading the information. And it's not so much the information that they learn from. What they find out is that this is a person that cares. I didn't know there were lawyers that gave of their time. This is really interesting. They Google the lawyer's name. They start to see that they're cited by other people. Who are they going to call? That person. There's an intimate relationship of trust built between the consumer of legal services, whether they're an in-house counsel, an executive, or an individual, with lawyers that give of themselves in a way that people can understand the way that they're talking, and that's blogging. Right. That's why blogging works so well. We don't know, you and I know, we don't know any bloggers that have given of themselves in an effective way on blogging that it hasn't changed their life.
Right. That's true.
That's true. I'm not talking about
two of us sitting here.
Yeah, I'm talking about, it's not like a little bit. I'm talking about, it's a life-changing event.
Right.
So that lawyer that I'm describing, like in Michigan, that's the Michigan Employment Insider.
Right. Trust is the basis of those relationships, and your words give others a reason to trust you.
And so what we want to do with this community of bloggers is give you the chance. Come on board. Join. Yeah. Hey, there's a blogger in this state that did really well on this subject. There's no blogger in your state that did. There's 70 major metro areas in this country that could support 13 areas of law, whether it's family law, bankruptcy, workers' comp, employment, these type of personal need type of subjects. What we're going to do with the community is not only shine a light on those lawyers so they can be seen independent in their state, in addition to at LexBlog, in addition to at Google, Facebook, Twitter, all over the place, but we're going to give them an independent platform on which to publish at a very reasonable cost. So one of the things you and I believe in is the power of the citizen journalist. Don't write for somebody else. I mean, who has the most powerful legal technology publication in the United States? You do. You own it. You started it. You did everything. Yep. So if we can empower people to be that citizen journalist on the subjects they're passionate about, wow, that's cool.
We'll get back to the interview with Kevin O'Keefe in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. Now let's return to my interview with Kevin O'Keefe of LexBlog. So Kevin, I wonder if you mentioned the word community a couple of times there, and we were talking a lot about this yesterday, but how do you see this as helping to build a community, not just with potential purchasers of legal services, but within the legal community itself, within the legal profession itself?
I think we have the law is taking a beating right now from shouldn't go to law school. Too much debt, you'll never get a job. People don't like lawyers. Lawyers charge too much. Lawyers don't understand technology. On and on and on. We got bar associations that are struggling with that issue. Independent people can do something about it without going through the traditional bureaucracy, if you will, of larger companies and organizations. And I'd like to think we can do that. So when I use the word community, it's done in two different ways. I've always viewed a newspaper as basically being the community. The newspaper reports what's going on in a community. Now, understand, I grew up in a town of 45 or 50,000 that I thought was very large growing up. Found out it wasn't when I went away to college. And then people talked about what was in the newspaper. And then they reported it the next day. Now, there were certain public affairs and whatnot, maybe deviated from that, but that was the community publication. So LexBlog can be the community reporting on what's being reported on. And we'll generate, as you know, bloggers generate conversation for the next day because people talk about what's being talked about on the blogs. But I also think the community can be, how do we help those lawyers that are blogging? How do you and I do, regular webinars or podcasts about, how do you use Twitter in an effective type of way as a blogger? How do you use a news aggregator? What are the different styles of blogging? Can we bring bloggers on that can explain what they learned, how they went about it in ways that we're learning things that we didn't know, but the community as a whole does that? Can we take it on the road? We both. You live just north of Boston. I'm going to be out in Boston for a couple events at the end of October. We're talking about putting together a small LawBlog con in Boston. So can we get that together so people are feeling the camaraderie of being bloggers? We can't wait for somebody else to do that. It's not like some company that doesn't believe in bloggers is going to put that on. Right. We've got to do that. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things we can do for a community. We can add more features to LexBlog. We can enhance profiles so that if you're blogging in Gloucester as a business lawyer, you should have a nice page up that says that it's who you are, what your background is, what the type of work you do, how do I get a hold of you? That's really cool. That's nice. We're supporting members of the community, and it probably goes on and on beyond that.
What else? A lot. I was actually going to ask you next, kind of where you see LexBlog heading in the next year or two, and you've just kind of answered that in a few of the things you're talking about. But what else? Where do you want to see this company move toward?
I think as a CEO, you work on a couple of different things. One, hiring good people, because they're going to have the ideas. I'm not going to have them all. I have no monopoly on ideas. So, we're in the process of looking for a few different people right now. Time flies. I think that the thing that we want to do is continue to build the momentum, not for ourselves, but for the bloggers. If we focus on what we can do for them, as opposed to what we can do for ourselves, we'll be fine. I've always thought that as a lawyer, when you're representing people, if you can focus on how many people we help and how we help them, everything else will take care of itself. So with this community, if we realize there's some very fine lawyers out there, women and men doing all types of things, and they're not just in the United States, so all around the world, we are uniquely situated to help them. Because when you and I started blogging, there was nobody that said, "I'd like to come out and give you a hug."
Yeah, right.
You're doing a great job, and I'd like you not to even pay anything, but I'd like to feature your content on this thing called LexBlog that you might have heard of. We've had the good fortune to somehow have that dumped in our lap. Yeah. So we have some responsibility to think about what we can do for those people. And I think right now what we want to focus on is recruiting those members. So if we have X number of bloggers in there right now, are there more blogs that we don't have in the United States? And then what's the next country we want to start to focus on to get them in? And it shouldn't be that hard when you really think about it. If I had 2 law students come knocking on my door today, anywhere in the United States, to say, I want to help recruit bloggers, and where do we get the list and how do we go about doing it? I think we'd be looking to get them on board. Hell, we could have undergrads do it too, but it'd be a great project for law students to be involved in. So I think that's a high priority.
Yeah. Well, I like that message of trying to look at what it is we can do for them and what we can do to help them. And on that note, I think we can. I think that's a good note on which to wrap up this recording.
My pleasure.
You're taking the time to sit and talk with me here in Seattle.
That was fun. Thank you.
As always. Thanks, Kevin. Well, that does it for my interview with Kevin O'Keefe. Big thanks to Kevin for taking the time to talk with me about his work and our mutual work as well. You can find us at LawNext.com or the Apple Podcast Store or any of your favorite podcast players. If you like what you hear, give us a good comment. This is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for listening.